Jovan, Buha! Buha!
Yo, yo! I'm Jovan Buha, NBA reporter and analyst for Buha's Block, and welcome to another live show. We officially have ourselves a series. The Oklahoma City Thunder responded in a big way in Game 2. They won 122 to 113 to even up the series 1-1. San Antonio technically stole home court, and I think they should be feeling pretty good about themselves. This was a game that came down to the final 30 seconds or so. San Antonio did not score on that possession. Steph Castle missed a three from the corner, and after that, the game was essentially over. But we have a bit to touch on from tonight's game, and then we'll get into the Q&A. Shout out to the chat. Shout out to the late night gang. Alfred says, well, we'll start with this. Alfred says, please shut down the ref talk, Jovan. It was a really well officiated game. I am of this mindset as well. Like, I do think we're going to touch on Isaiah Hartenstein, and I think he got away with a lot of contact. Now, it depends on the night, depends on the crew, how they're going to call a certain game. And some games you're going to get away with more stuff. I thought tonight was certainly one of those games where he was grabbing a lot, and there'd be times where Wemby's trying to rotate as the low man. Isaiah Hartenstein's grabbing his arm. We saw that cost Karl-Anthony Towns against the Cavs in that game one against New York and Cleveland, right? So it just depends on the night, depends how you're going to call things. Certainly some dirtiness with clearly there was a dirty foul on the Steph Castle, him grabbing his locks. I thought that was intentional. I really don't think there's a way to justify that. He did cross the line to me a bit, but that did not get picked up on in the moment. That did not get called. I do think generally it was a pretty fairly reffed game. There was some I think Keldon Johnson is a guy who initiates a lot of contact in the paint and is sort of the Spurs version of that, kind of mucking it up in there. But I think this is the narrative with OKC. Anytime they win a game, anytime there's any controversy with the refs, it's always I think I've said this before. I said this during the Lakers series. I thought there was some confirmation bias where anytime things are going in OKC's favor, there tends to be this whole, well, it's the refs, and they're just a really difficult team to officiate. They are very physical. They are dishing out a lot of contact, and then they also can benefit from drawn fouls or maybe overselling some of the I know there's the Isaiah Joe flop, and certainly some plays that you can isolate. I'm sure if you really want to find some of that with San Antonio, you could find that as well. But I think the Thunder generally benefit from the whistle to a degree, but I don't think it was egregious tonight. I do think the Isaiah Hartenstein no call on that Castle foul and some of the trickery that he's done. Like he reminds me of, for those who remember in the mid 2010s, Andrew Bogut on those Warriors teams was like low-key the dirtiest player in the league, and he would do moving screens, Gortat screens. He'd be holding guys' jerseys, holding guys' arms. He'd be setting, just little, guys running across the lane. He just forearm shivers them. Like Andrew Bogut, Draymond got a lot of the attention for his dirty stuff, but I thought Bogut was just as dirty. He just did it in more subtle ways. It's kind of like OKC, where you can look at Dort, and I thought Dort also had a play where he dove into the back of Wemby's legs that was kind of a Dort-esque play. But I think Hartenstein is the one here that you could say is kind of the subtle dirty one, although it was not very subtle tonight. But I don't think that's the reason why San Antonio lost tonight. I think a big reason why San Antonio lost tonight is because De'Aaron Fox was out and Dylan Harper ended up leaving the game early, and that was a really tough blow for a group that was already struggling to some degree with OKC's increased ball pressure and OKC's increased defensive intensity, and to lose your two best, I would say, ball handlers. Like Steph Castle has been awesome over the first couple of games, but he has 20 turnovers through the first couple of games. So there has been a limitation there with his ability to make reads against OKC's defense. And Dylan Harper projects to be the long-term point guard of the future, with Steph Castle more of that 2-3 hybrid. And then De'Aaron Fox obviously is the current point guard of the present for the Spurs. So I thought that to some degree was like the story of the game. Like OKC lost J-Dub as well, but I mean, OKC played 50 games this season without J-Dub. They played 6 playoff games without him. Like, they're a well-oiled machine, whether they have J-Dub or not. He obviously takes them to a different level and had a really good game one. So I'm not trying to diminish the loss of J-Dub. It's more just OKC has enough weapons to offset J-Dub and his potential absence. San Antonio does not. We saw, I mean, it got down to like Jordan McLaughlin having to come in, and he had played 26 minutes in the playoffs, and now he's playing big minutes. And you just saw at some point San Antonio didn't have enough ball handling and playmaking and passing out there, and I think that really hurt them. But I want to get into some of the adjustments that OKC made and why I think that helped them win this game. And we will be touching on Isaiah Hartenstein again. But look, this is setting up to be an all-time series. I said it in the post I did on YouTube where I did my conference finals predictions. I predicted OKC in 7 and New York in 6, and I still feel pretty good about both of those predictions. But this is set, in parentheses next to OKC in 7. I said I think this is going to be an all-time series, maybe the best series of the 2020s, and I stand by that. I think that's how this is shaping up. Like, this was a high-level basketball game that, even with both sides missing players, and AJ Mitchell went down at the end of the game, and I don't know if we've gotten clarity yet on his status, but I mean, this was just a really high-level basketball game. It feels like this is right now the pinnacle of the sport in terms of all of the speed and athleticism and just high-level defense and toughness and tenacity on both sides. Like, this has been basketball nirvana through the first couple games between these two teams. And I think if you're a true basketball fan, and even if you are a fan of one of the two teams, or if you're hate watching, like, it's just been a really fun conference finals and just really high level basketball. And everyone's, including myself, has been saying like, this is the finals, and that's how this has looked. So let's get into it though. Like, I thought this was, I saw this shout out to my guy Law Murray over at The Athletic. He noted that this is the first time the Western Conference Finals has been tied 1-1 since 2018 between the Warriors and Rockets. And that alone, like, we have had some pretty lopsided Western Conference Finals going on multiple years. If you're going back to like Lakers Nuggets with the Lakers winning, or Lakers Nuggets with the Nuggets winning, or Dallas Minnesota, or OKC Minnesota last year. Like, it has been pretty lopsided Western Conference Finals matchups going on over a half decade, and it's nice to actually have some juice with this. And this does feel like a game that, or a series rather, that I fully expect to be 2-2 coming back to OKC, and I do expect it to go the distance. But I will say, like, you got to feel better about San Antonio's odds. They were right there tonight, despite the adversity that, with some of the foul stuff, or some of the frustration that they had, losing Dylan Harper, also being down De'Aaron Fox. Like, I thought they're still in it right until the last 30 seconds or so. And you have to have a certain level of confidence if you're San Antonio that, like, on paper it's 1-1. I think through the first couple games, San Antonio has been the better team overall. But again, shout out to the chat. Shout out to the late night gang. Let's get into it. So, going to pull up the box score, and then we'll talk through. So the biggest thing for me coming out of this game was the big adjustment that OKC made, which was putting Isaiah Hartenstein on Victor Wembanyama. And I was curious to see, like, they threw a lot of Lu Dort, J-Dub, Alex Caruso on him in game one. And tonight it was almost exclusively the bigs. Like, there were some times where there were some cross matches in transition or just with their switching. But for the most part tonight was Isaiah Hartenstein as the primary guy. Jay Will was on him during those minutes against the bench. And then Chet also got some time against him. And I thought that was ultimately the right move. It ended up limiting Wemby to just 16 shot attempts. 7 of those were threes. So you go back to game one, and he only attempted 2 threes, including that iconic Steph Curry-esque, hit ahead, catch it back in transition, and just launch from 30 feet. That was a huge shot that sent it to double overtime. Tonight, I mean, shot the ball well from 3 for 7, but still nearly half of his shots were threes. And I think that's a win for OKC's defense. And playing Isaiah Hartenstein more, he only played 12 minutes in game 1, ends up playing 27. Actually closed the game over Chet. They went small still with one big, but it was Isaiah Hartenstein out there with Chet on the bench. And as I said earlier, like Isaiah Hartenstein, look, like I know people want to get into the ref stuff. People want to get into the physicality. Like you have to play as physically as you're allowed to play, within reason, right? You don't want to be taking cheap shots. And I do think the Steph Castle play was a cheap shot. And that was something that, just it crossed the line. But that aside, in general, if you're going to be allowed to grab and hold and play physically, like you should grab and hold and play physically. And I think Isaiah Hartenstein did a great job of just being really physical with Wemby and bumping him on drives, just holding him off of the ball on both sides of the ball, offensively and defensively. And then just like putting the kind of the Wemby part aside, his floaters, he hit 3 floaters tonight, had 10 points overall. His passing, the 3 assists, but him as a DHO guy, his high-low chemistry, had a nice lob to Chet. His rebounding, he had 13 rebounds overall, 8 offensive rebounds. And his defense, and whether it's the rim protection, the defense against Wemby, or just being a big physical presence out there, like that to me really shifted the dynamic. Because among the bigs, if we're looking at the bigs on both sides, like Chet is Chet and Wemby are just, there's an element, like I wouldn't call Wemby a finesse big. I would call Chet a little bit more of a finesse big, but like they both are obviously thin. And there's only so much there in terms of their ability to just like push guys around physically. They both leverage their height and length and size well, but Wemby and Chet can both be pushed around by even smaller guys if they have a strong base, a strong center of gravity, and if they have a certain amount of muscle or just pure weight. J. Will is more of a perimeter big as well. He does have some strength and heft to him. And we have seen him, especially in like some of those matchups with Jokic, he'll muck it up in there and tussle with guys in the post. But he's not like an elite rebounder. He's not really going to impose his will that way. So Isaiah Hartenstein's the one guy right now. We could throw Luke Cornett in there, but he's just had a better game 2 than game 1. But just he's more of a limited big in this series. Like Hartenstein's the one guy among the bigs that can come in and really have his way in the paint and push guys around and be physical. And I thought that adjustment from OKC being like, we're going to dictate the terms of engagement even more. I think it wasn't just Hartenstein. I thought everybody ramped up their defensive intensity, their pickup points. They forced similar amount of turnovers, 21 tonight, 23 overall in game 1. So that's 44 turnovers for San Antonio through the first couple of games. I mean, that's kind of been the series so far in terms of, I think the most interesting part of this series for me is San Antonio's offense versus OKC's defense. Because when San Antonio takes care of the ball and they're moving the ball, and whether it's pick and rolls or driving kick and starting the blender, like San Antonio has been getting a ton of good looks, and the dribble penetration, the shot quality with their shooters, they have been humming offensively. The issue has been they cannot stop turning the ball over. That's where you give OKC a ton of credit. And like that to me is the chess match the rest of the series of, can San Antonio, and part of it I think will just be what happens with Fox and Harper, and are they out game 3? Are one of them able to return in game 3, and just what's their status the rest of the way? I think if they're missing a significant amount of time, like if they miss the next 2 games, for example, I think this could be 3-1 OKC. I think they're going to need at least one of them back to be able to even the series or win. I just don't know if they could win without their 2 primary ball handlers. But if they can get those guys back, like if they have like a 15 turnover game, San Antonio should win, and should win maybe not like comfortably, but it could be more like game one where they're ahead for a lot of it, because they were right outside of the second quarter, which was a disaster for them. They outscored OKC in the third. They tied them in the first, and they were -1 in the fourth. So like they were right there outside of that really rough, sloppy second quarter where OKC was able to turn them over a ton, get out in transition. They hit a bunch of threes or several threes. And that to me was the difference. But really smart adjustment from Mark Dagnall. He could have continued with more Caruso on Wemby. He could have gone more Chet on Wemby, but finding a way to make Isaiah Hartenstein playable and even playing him over Chet at times. Like, I mean, he's just done a better job against Wemby than Chet has so far in the series. And it's a relatively low bar, but has, I would say, now outplayed Chet through the first couple of games. So they have to find a way to get Chet going. If you're OKC, he is not, 8 points, 8 rebounds in game one, 13 points, 4 rebounds in game two. So he's averaging 10.5 points and 6 rebounds through the first couple games, just not getting it done. Meanwhile, his counterpart, Wemby, is averaging 31 points and 20.5 rebounds through the first couple games, 3.5 blocks. Like he's just been like Chet didn't have a block tonight. He's just not been playing well. But I thought that the big adjustment, if we're just looking at the tactical battle between these two teams, was putting Isaiah Hartenstein on Wemby, was him getting away with a lot of contact against Wemby, and the way that warped the physical matchup here. Because you look at, there's several things that just kind of flipped with this. If you look at the offensive rebounding, after San Antonio was plus 21 on the glass in game one, they end up only out rebounding OKC by 4 in game two. OKC actually gets one more offensive rebound than them. Then you add in the turnover battle, and like OKC decidedly won the possession battle tonight. And then you also look at points in the paint. It was much closer than it was in game one. So the Hartenstein effect had a real impact here in terms of allowing OKC to hold their own more in the paint, hold their own more on the glass. And that had a real impact. As for some minor adjustments, I thought Shai, we got to talk about Shai, bounce back, 30 points, 12 for 24 shooting, 0 for 3 on threes, 6 for 6 at the free throw line, 4 rebounds, 9 assists. The passing has been at a high level through the first couple games. 1 steal, 2 blocks. I still think Wemby was the best player on the floor tonight, but Shai made it more of a conversation. You could argue it was Shai. I would still lean Wemby. Definitely Wemby's been the best player through the first couple games. But Shai, I thought was, he had the moment late in the game where he's telling the guys to keep calm and stay under control. And I thought that leadership there, but also just he embodied that himself, where I thought he was far more assertive, far more steady, far more aggressive at the same time, which is one of his hallmarks, and it's a delicate balance. But I thought his ability to create separation against Stephon Castle, and he's obviously doing some stuff with his hands with the off arm, and but that's just part of his game, and that's part of what he gets away with, and it's just. Yeah, he what was awesome tonight. Hit some big shots in the fourth quarter, but the playmaking as well. They were a little bit more. They, as in the Spurs, were a little bit more conservative. They did mix in some doubles, or in the backcourt or around half court. But with how OKC shot the ball, Caruso's been shooting lights out. Jay Will hit a couple threes. Kason Wallace went 4 for 6. Jared McCain only went 3 for 9, but we know he's a laser. AJ Mitchell went 0 for 2. Isaiah Joe also 0 for 2, but he's a laser that you're going to guard. I think OKC did a better job of getting threes to their better shooters, or at least in Caruso's case, a guy who's shooting well. And that also prevented San Antonio from being as aggressive with some of the shading over and the doubling. So that's its own cat and mouse game. I think there is a cat and mouse game with how they're defending Wemby and how they're loading up against the Spurs ball handlers. And then there's also the cat and mouse game with how the Spurs are defending Shai and how aggressive they can be. And when Shai's on an island, for as great as Steph Castle is defensively, which I continue to be blown away by him. He's amazing. He's one of my favorite players to watch in the league. Shai is going to just get to his spots. He's going to create shots. And I also thought he did a better job of avoiding Wemby and being aware of where Wemby was and being like, okay, instead of taking that extra dribble, I'm now going to, stop here, do the push off and then fade back and hit the jumper. But it wasn't just SGA tonight. As aforementioned, it was Hartenstein. Caruso continues to be a monster. I mean, you could argue he's been OKC's best player through the first 2 games. He's in that conversation. The Thunder were plus 18 in his 25 minutes, team best mark and game best mark. Like Alex Caruso just does so many little things. And with it's like, the diving on the ground for loose balls, saving balls out of bounds, but then it's also the rotations, just where he's at, quarterbacking the defense. He is, the clip has been circulating about him on Old Man in the 3, or it might have been the new version, Young Man in the 3, where he's talking with Jay Will and I think it's Isaiah Joe as well. He's like, do you guys want me in June or do you want me during like practice and like the regular season? And he's like the ultimate 16 game player. Like he's on the short list of guys who really rise from the regular season to the playoffs. Like I think if we're just gauging like who's a true playoff riser in a multitude of ways, like Alex Caruso's on the short list for biggest playoff risers in the league. Kayson Wallace, his 4 threes were huge. They all felt like they were all momentous. They were all at points where either San Antonio was on a run or OKC's offense was kind of in the mud, and he just hit dagger after dagger after dagger, had 4 steals. The bench really coming up big again for OKC. 4 steals for Wallace, 2 steals for McCain, 4 steals for AJ Mitchell. AJ Mitchell started to get going, look a little bit more comfortable, had a big jumper late. Jared McCain let it fly, didn't have much success inside the arc, went just 1 for 5, 3 for 9 on threes, but his rebounding, the passing, the steals, he found a way to be a contributor. And one interesting like big picture thing for me with OKC, as they have to make some roster decisions this offseason. Game 1, Lou Dort only plays 22 minutes. Game 2, Lou Dort plays only 16 minutes. I thought he had some nice drives that they tried to leverage San Antonio not really respecting him into him being more of a driving kick guy. And he had a few assists. He had a pull-up jumper. He hit a 3. So I thought like he did some nice things, but they lost his minutes in a big way. And they just don't like they're leaning into, Caruso and Wallace are just better offensively than Dort. I think they both can just do more offensively than Dort with their passing and their ability to create separation, get downhill. And in this matchup, I actually think they match up better defensively than Dort as well. And then AJ Mitchell has ascended into a certain level where he's going to play a certain amount. But I just wonder if you're OKC, I don't want to go as far as to say you don't need Dort, because Dort is still an all defense level guy. He's an important piece for them defensively. And I think he's a critical tool within their defensive toolkit. But at the same time, I'm like, if they have to lose somebody, like with the performance that Isaiah Hartenstein had tonight and with how important center play and big man play is overall and how difficult it is to find guys of a certain caliber, I think if OKC has to choose between Isaiah Hartenstein and Lou Dort at some point, I would heavily lean on the side of keeping Hartenstein and Dort being the more expendable one. And you have Caruso and Wallace and McCain and Mitchell all ready to step in. And I think it would probably be Wallace, with them preferring to keep Caruso in bubble wrap in the regular season and keep him in a bench role. McCain and Mitchell are more I think Mitchell's a good defender, but they're more offensive minded. And I think it would probably make more sense to go with Wallace like longer term. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how they navigate that. On the San Antonio side, Wemby 21-17, 6 assists. I really liked. He did play more from the perimeter tonight, but I liked a lot of his passing, whether it was kick out reads or finding cutters. 1 steal, 4 blocks, 8 for 16 shooting, as aforementioned, 3 for 7 on threes. Didn't have the same offensive impact, but just This sequence encapsulates Wemby of he drives, he misses a running floater, recovers his own offensive rebound, putback dunk, then on the next defensive possession, blocks Alex Caruso and corrals a contested defensive rebound. And it was just like the Wemby experience in 25 seconds. Like this dude is just ridiculous. And he had a couple of those putback dunks on his own misses. And, the 3-point shooting, he had some big threes tonight. It's still, it is like a no-fly zone to a degree. I thought they were more aggressive attacking him, or at least trying to get into the paint and a little bit more confident, maybe trying to attack him. But you still see guys dribble into the paint, see Wemby's there, and dribble out. It's U-turn basketball when Wemby's out there. Devin Vassell, I thought, was shooting a little bit too much early for my liking. I think he started the game 1 for 5, but from that point on, went 6 for 9, hit some huge threes, and kind of like with Kayson Wallace hitting a bunch of momentum threes, I thought Devin Vassell hit some pretty big threes for San Antonio to keep them in the game. Steph Castle, 25, 5 and 8. Thought he was much better offensively. His finishing with the Euros, with the post game, with the head fakes, dude's just a baller. And I know everyone's coming for his head with the turnovers. I understand that. He's got to be better. More turnovers tonight than assists. Through the first 2 games, he's got 19 assists to 20 turnovers. That's not going to cut it. You want that to be at least like 2.5 from an assist to turnover ratio, not like negative. But he's not a point guard, and I think he's made some real strides as like he's a second-year player who's not a point guard, who's being thrown into a point guard situation with their point guard out. And I think his destiny is to be a high-level secondary ball handler and then an elite defense. I think defensive player of the year type defender, but certainly all defense, first or second team level defender. And he's done that defensively. I think he's done a really good job on Shai, and Shai's success has come, I think, largely against other guys. But the turnovers are the thing that everyone's going to be talking about with Steph Castle. Part of me is like, this is a second-year dude who's playing out of position. I live with it to a degree against this defense. I don't think he'd be having these types of turnovers against maybe the other 28 defenses in the league, at least not on this volume. But he's got to be better, right? And especially if Harper and Fox are out and Castle is going to be the primary ball handler and penetrator and playmaker, then he just has to be better. And I think he will be. He's had some really rough ones where it's like some of the ones in traffic and the driving kicks, I understand it, but there's also been some miscommunication ones where there's one where he thought like Champagne was cutting when he was actually popping, throws it to the cut spot, that goes out of bounds. There's been times where he drives and then it looks like he's trying to score, but then they converge on him and he's like, oh, I should probably pass this out, but he doesn't see a guy rotating, or he just misreads where the shooter is, and he's got to be better with that. Like, there's no doubt about that. I just think dude's a baller. I really just love his approach to the game, and I think he's been great through the first couple games, turnovers aside. Like, he's having a true two-way impact. Dylan Harper continues to be excellent on his drives and his. I think one of the things that really stands out with San Antonio's backcourt is like these dudes are not only quick and athletic, but they're strong. And I mean, Dylan Harper had a drive against Lou Dort where he just moved Lou Dort with his shoulder, and like not many guards can move Lou Dort like that. And so like Dylan Harper has got a really bright future, and it was a massive blow tonight that they lost him. Champagne had an off shooting night tonight, and I don't think was quite as good on the defensive glass or as the low man off the bench. Keldon Johnson gave them some juice tonight, hit a big corner three, and some of the 5 offensive rebounds. You'd like to see more defensive rebounds, I think, from him, but he had to step up with Harper out. And then everybody else, it's a mixed bag of. It's crazy. McLaughlin, it felt like he played way more than 7 minutes, but those were 7 loud minutes. I would say largely negative, but he did hit a couple threes. Carter Bryant had a couple rough turnovers where he was immediately yanked. Cornette was better, but I just don't really think is very playable in this matchup. And then Harrison Barnes gave them some okay minutes. On the OKC side, J-Dub obviously went out, and I thought he was playing fine before he went out. 4 points, a couple steals. I think that those are my final thoughts on the game. Are just, this has become a war of attrition where you have J-Dub and AJ Mitchell on one side. I haven't seen anything on AJ Mitchell yet, but you also have Harper and Fox on the other side, and this might just be like a last man standing situation of who can withstand more injuries. But I mean, I think the fact of the matter is, so it looks like there's no AJ Mitchell update. I think the fact of the matter is OKC is deeper and they can withstand more injuries. So, I mean, losing J-Dub and AJ Mitchell, 2 of their top 4 scorers, would be pretty big blows to their offense. And I think that would favor San Antonio's defense a bit. But if San Antonio is missing their 2 primary ball handlers, then I think they're in a pretty big offensive hole. But that's, I think, like the war of attrition, how San Antonio is going to counter against Shai and some of OKC's shooting, and then how San Antonio is now going to counter Isaiah Hartenstein. And I think one thing for me, just off the top of my head, is going to be leveraging Wemby more off of the ball. And I think there's different, you could run more horns, you could run more stack, you could run more Wemby coming off of pin downs or double pin downs. I think you have to leverage Wemby's athleticism and speed against Hartenstein, because if it's like trying to post Wemby up or trying to have Wemby just drive into Hartenstein, I think Hartenstein has the strength and physicality advantage where he can hold his own, unless Wemby's just shooting over the top of him, which he's capable of. But I think you have to leverage Wemby's speed and athleticism against Isaiah Hartenstein and get him on the move more and find ways to try to run him off different actions to get Isaiah Hartenstein switched off of him, because I think that's the clear limitation with Hartenstein, is like he's not the fleetest of foot as just a traditional 6'11", 7-foot player. So if you can run Wemby off like double pin downs or run some sort of stack action to try to get a different matchup on him, I think that's the way to counter some of what OKC was doing tonight. But with all that said, let's get into Q&A here. First one from Mama Buha. Norma Maldonado Buha. Thank you for the super chat. Glad to see you cover these games. Thank you. It's been fun to step outside my comfort zone and talk about different teams. And I think you're definitely earlier in the season. It was an adjustment for me because I have a lot of thoughts about the basketball I watch, but I've primarily felt comfortable just talking about the Lakers or Laker games. And this has been a season-long project for me to just step out of my comfort zone and get more comfortable actually, having confidence in what I'm saying about other teams and my observations. So it's been fun. Peter, thank you for the super chat. Did you see the Weitzman article where he reports that LA offered T-Wolves assistant GM Steve Senior the job of executive VP of basketball operations would have been Rob's boss? I did see that. It was interesting to see that he turned that down. And I know Zach Lowe on his show recently said that he's been hearing that people have been reluctant to join, that several people have been interviewed have just been reluctant to join the Lakers because they're not sure if it's a Dodgers Mark Walter hire or if it's a Rob hire. They're not sure if they want to be attached to Rob. And I read between the lines, like I guess they're questioning how long he's going to be there based on that, or that seems to be the way that that's being taken. So yeah, I thought the story was interesting. I thought there was a lot of positives with how involved the Dodgers group has been, some of the stuff with Austin and working with the Dodgers medical staff to try to return for the playoffs. But yeah, it's interesting that he would not want to take that role when it's such a step up. But we'll see who ends up getting hired for the assistant GM roles. So this is what Antonio says, that he wouldn't have been Rob's boss. The offer was for executive VP, Rob's president. So I guess these titles are so complicated, but I mean, it's not the best look, I'll be honest. Like, it's not the greatest look for the Lakers that someone is turning down a massive promotion to go there. And I mean, clearly, whether executive VP is above him or below him, it's above assistant GM in Minnesota. And so they turned down a pretty big promotion that's not the best, but we'll see who they end up getting. This one, To Sizzle, thank you for calling this out. This is what I was responding to in the chat. The Castle dunk was maybe the play of the playoffs. I mean, there's several plays in that. Like, I mean, Wemby's 3 is up there, but certainly one of the dunks of the playoffs, one of the dunks of the season. That was a ridiculous dunk on Hartenstein. And he launched. It was violent. It was angry. It was aggressive. I love that dunk. Antonio asks, do you know how many other teams have the expensive biomechanics lab that the Lakers are building at their facility? I don't know off the top of my head, but I do know that that type of stuff is a bit more common. So I think it is. Now the Lakers might be building a state-of-the-art one that's like better than everyone else's. Like, there are varying degrees of how nice everything is, right? And I do think the Lakers have one of the nicer practice facilities, for example, but I don't think they're in the minority here, or at least my understanding is that they're not in the minority here with having a biomechanics lab at their facility. I think there are, I don't know the exact number, but I would say like there's a decent amount of teams that have that. But regardless, I think it's a step. It's like a major step in the right direction that the Lakers are building that and are modernizing in that way. So I think in the future they will have situations in which they are the trailblazers and the ones setting the example or setting the standard for what an organization should be or what an organization should look like. But I think right now, some of the stuff that they're doing, like they're not the only franchise that has 2 assistant GMs. That they have one of the smallest front offices in the league, and now they're going to be expanding that. So I think it's all around a positive. But some of the stuff that they are talking about, and some of the stuff even previously, like over the last few years, where they'll be like, oh, we have this proprietary thing. Like a lot of teams have proprietary analytics or whatever. So I think they're catching up to a lot of the league, but we don't have to dwell on the past. It's more about like, hey, they're finally catching up. And I think that's a good thing. LA 824, thank you for the super chat. What do you think OKC does this offseason with the roster crunch, all the picks, and the Mitchell contract? Trade up for Boozer, trade for Giannis. Feels like they could do anything with their assets. I think a big thing here will be whether they win the title or not, which to me is really just going to be if they win this series or not. I'll give New York some respect. I'm not giving Cleveland any right now. I think they blew that series, but it's tough because there are other things they can do. I know everyone's focused on Hartenstein and Lou Dort, but there's smaller moves they can make where, for example, they could trade Isaiah Joe and Aaron Wiggins, make a combined $22 million, which is actually more than Lou Dort. And so they could actually just dump both of those guys, and whether that's in the same deal or like if you're the Lakers and OKC just offers you, you'd rather them offer you Dort or Hartenstein, but if OKC is like, hey, would you like to take Isaiah Joe or Aaron Wiggins for free? You would take that, right? So I think there are ways, like those guys have value. Those guys are positive assets. Those guys will have a market. I mean, they might even be able to get assets for them, but at a minimum, if they're like, hey, team X or team Y, do you want to take Isaiah Joe and or Aaron Wiggins? They could get off of that. So everyone's been looking more at like them getting off of starting money, but getting off of Hartenstein, for example, would be more beneficial because it's going to lower their tax bill and just how above the second apron they are. But with Dort also being an option, and it, at least to my understanding, being more framed through like the Hartenstein versus Dort conversation, you actually could just get off Isaiah Joe and Aaron Wiggins, who are not every night mainstays in your rotation, and those guys combined are actually make more than Dort. So, I don't have any real insight into what they're going to do. OKC is notoriously tight-lipped, and they're as close to the vest as any organization in the league. I would say even more so than the Lakers. But they have the means to trade up if they so choose. They have the means to go after Giannis. But I feel like it would probably have to have been like if they had lost tonight and they like lost this series in 5 and it was just like, oh crap, San Antonio's here and they're better than us and Chet's not playing that well. Maybe you see them try to make a bigger move, but it feels like if they win the title, I don't really see them trading for Giannis. I think them trading for Giannis would be Chet has a rough series. Wemby dominates them. They feel like they need to get more physical. And then it's maybe like, all right, do you do the Chet plus picks for Giannis type move? But I mean, that's not how Presti is typically operated. That's not a very Presti move. He's more finding guys on the margins or undervalued guys. And so, I mean, they're going to have to do something. They do have a roster crunch. They have multiple first-round picks in this draft, so they're not going to keep all those guys. Or if they keep those guys, they're going to have to get off some other money. But I would say I think they're going to keep Hartenstein, and it's going to be more of either Dort, and they're just like, this guy, we have the means to replace him. Let's get off of Dort. Or it's going to be, we have some cheaper guys who are actually very valuable that we could just dump. And again, if you're the Lakers, even if you're the Bulls or the Nets or the Pistons could have cap space, like one of these teams that has cap space, you could take an Isaiah Joe or Wiggins and you're not going to say no to that. So to quote Rob, they have OKC has infinite optionality this summer, and they could trade up, they could trade down, they could trade out of the draft, they could trade for Giannis, they could trade for whichever other star or high level player becomes available, and they could dump a starter or they could dump bench guys. Like they could do whatever they want. It's absurd the level of flexibility. The Mitchell stuff, I mean, I don't see anything changing with him. Like he's on one of the best value contracts in the league. So I know there's been, I mean, and I know like Bill Simmons has been on, are they going to trade J-Dub? And there was do you attach Mitchell? I think Mitchell, I know he's had a rough start to this series, but what he flashed against Phoenix and the Lakers, like not every team is San Antonio. He still, I think, is a pretty good young prospect. And I would not be looking to get off that contract unless maybe to your point, like trading up. If you get into the top 3 or 4, maybe that's a different conversation. But outside of that, just trading up for like the 5th pick or the 8th pick or whatever, I don't think that makes any sense with Mitchell. Peter, thank you for the super chat. Is it true that P-Watt was at the LA practice facility? Yes, that is where Clutch does their pro day at the Lakers facility. So not just P-Watt, but a bunch of Clutch guys. Like, I mean, AD was there after, I believe he was there last summer after I could be wrong on that, but like AD's been there before. LeBron's been there before. All the big Clutch guys, Trae Young has been there. Zach LaVine, all of the big Clutch guys through the years come through. And it's like sort of an initiation, right? Like you're a young player that is now signing with Clutch, and you see like the stars, and it's sort of like welcome to the club, right? So I wouldn't read too much into that. The other thing here is that guys are like 70%. It's probably gone down a little bit over the last few years, especially post COVID. But like 70% of the NBA is in LA in the off season. Like so many players have off season apartments, condos, Airbnbs, hotels, whatever in LA that they stay in, and they do a bunch of training out here. Like a lot of the trainers are out here. You got the UCLA runs, you got secret runs. Like you got a lot of stuff in LA in the off season, to say nothing of like the weather and the nightlife and the food scene and all that. So I think a lot of guys will be out here, and then that will coincide with the pro days. Like CAA has a pro day, and it just everyone, the big agencies have their pro days. So I wouldn't read too much into it, but you could read into it a little bit if you want to. Yu-Gi-Oh! Dual Channel, thank you for the super chat. Just being real, the Lakers aren't winning next year. Better to learn life after LeBron now than during Luka's final contract year. I have said that I think it's going to be really difficult for LA to build a roster on par with OKC and San Antonio for next season. I think it's probably they need this offseason and next offseason, and it's going to be a multi-transactional cycle, or at least like 2 summer build to get to that level. I think like best case scenario, I think, is they add like 2 high-level players this summer. I don't think that's enough. And within that, you might also be like, you could be, to go back to the previous question about like Peyton Watson, like you could add Peyton Watson and lose Rui and Luke and DA, and then maybe replace DA with like a cheap center. And it's like, yes, you have a better starting group, but maybe even replace DA with like Robert Williams, whatever. You have a better starting group, but you're maybe not as deep. And like now you're replacing Rui and Luke with 2 cheaper shooters who are just not as good as them, either at shooting or just like overall. And it's like you improve the starting group, but you're not as deep. And like that is going to take some time to fill in those gaps. For those who haven't seen it yet, I did a mailbag today and I talked through different cap scenarios and went through like, okay, this is the most likely scenario of who's on the books, empty roster charges, the number 25 pick, etc. Like, okay, this is what LA has. You start to add in those cap holds, and that adds up quickly. And then even looking at, okay, what if LeBron takes a discount? Okay, what if Rui takes a discount? Like, what does that look like? You're still pretty much spending the cap space, and that's before even mentioning potentially signing or trading for somebody. So the cap space goes pretty quickly. 50 sounds like a lot on paper. It's not a lot in actuality, with LA needing to fill up half their roster. So I think it is going to be a multi-transaction cycle here to truly build like a bona fide contender. I think next year they could step into next year. Like upside wise, I think they could step into next year as like the clear number 3 best team in the league. I think there's a pathway to that, but I don't think that there's any realistic way to build a roster that is on paper better than OKC or San Antonio. And that's like the challenge here is you're trying to win a championship, but you're going to have to go through those 2 teams, and those 2 teams are playing at a level and have rosters that like both teams have picks for days. They have young talent that's only going to be getting better. Like, look at how much better Stephon Castle and Dylan Harper have gotten over the course of this season. Now imagine where they're going to be next playoffs, and they have multiple playoffs to continue to improve over. So yeah, I mean, it's going to be a big challenge for the Lakers. Now the second point is interesting because I think that was a point I was making earlier in the kind of midway through the season of just like, the Lakers are going to be in a post-LeBron era at some point, whether it's next year, the following year, maybe he plays 2 more years at the most, and it's like 3 years from now. But they will need to build a post-LeBron roster. And is it better to potentially build that now, just rip the Band-Aid off and be like, we might even take a step back this season, but we need to start figuring out like, what is this going to look like after LeBron? Or do you continue to delay that post LeBron future and be like, all right, 1 more year or 2 more years? And like, he's playing at such a high level that, I mean, it is going to be tough to replace him. Like, if you replace him with Peyton Watson, like Peyton Watson is just straight up not a better player than LeBron right now, right? I think he's a better defender. And I think like long term, he could be a nice fit next to Luka and Austin. But for what LeBron was giving the Lakers and being the best player in that first round series and being the number 1 option down the stretch of the season, like Peyton Watson's not at that level. So whether it's him or whoever else you want to throw in there, or maybe it's like a Walker Kessler, which is just an entirely different player archetype, would improve the center spot. Jalen Duren would improve the center spot by a lot, but you're also taking a step back offensively in terms of shot creation, passing play. So it's this, I mean, is arguably the biggest question of the summer for the Lakers. Like, I think it's straightforward. They're going to re-sign don't know why I said it that way. Austin Reeves, and then they have some decisions to make with Rui and Marcus, depending on their prices, depending on their market, depending on what else is out there. But like LeBron and how they envision that and what that number looks like, that continues to be the biggest question of the offseason. And then final one here from Karl Marx. Thank you for the super chat. No team can out-depth OKC and Spurs. Teams need to front-load their team and have their stars elevate the game of the rotation players. Giannis to LA. So this is something we talked about for 40 minutes the other day on Lakers Collective of this is what I've kind of been coming around to is I think if you try to go, as Rob said at the exit interview, the Lakers are not going to tank. They're not going to acquire all this young talent and have this patience over the years. Like they want to win now. And there is an immediacy to the Lakers that they cannot build the same way that OKC, San Antonio, or he also mentioned Detroit have built through the years, have built through the draft, have built through multiple tanking seasons and being a lottery team to like a play-in team to a home court team to then going on a deeper run. Like that's not how the Lakers are going to build the roster. So what that means is then it's a lot more free agency and trades for the Lakers. And I think probably trades with the way that free agency has been on life support for multiple summers now. But you like through that lens, through that approach, you are not going to build a team with the same level of depth as OKC and San Antonio. And if we're being completely honest here, the Lakers have really struggled to build depth going back to the 2021 season. Like I would say the 2020, 2021 Lakers were the last team, the last Lakers roster that I would truly consider a deep roster. And even that group was not as deep as the title team. I think you could argue like some of the stuff with their starters and was actually better, but clearly they lost in the first round. 80 gets hurt against Phoenix, but I think that was the last time the Lakers had built like a truly deep roster with actual like multiple quality guys coming off of the bench. Ever since then, it's been a lot of 7-man rosters, 8-man rosters. And once you get to like spots 8 or 9 in the rotation, it's like minimum level guys who probably shouldn't be playing on a team that has any serious ambitions. And that's been the Lakers' problem for years now. And I've been criticizing it for years, and they continue to build similar quality rosters. I mean, I would say this year's roster was the deepest since that 2021 team, but I don't think it was as deep as that team. And I think it still probably went 8, maybe 9 deep. But I would say overall it was like a better balanced rotation. But so even if the Lakers try to build an OKC or San Antonio build, they've not been able to do that for 5 years. So I don't even know if they're capable of doing it. Maybe with the new front office changes and new ownership and just new management, new stakeholders, they're in a better position to do that. But I think based on the last 5 years, like I would not, if we're talking about like the strengths of the front office, I would not say that building depth and identifying back end roster talent is a strength. And that's something that they're going to have to get better at. So even if they try to do this, I don't even know if they could. And I would probably err on the side of them not being able to. So I do, like, I'm starting to come around to, do you try to just say, hey, we're going to, and Giannis specifically is interesting because Giannis, I think, is one of the few players, if not maybe the only player, or I mean, yeah, I would say like at least the player with the best chance of looking at Wemby and looking at Chet at Hartenstein and being like, I'm running through your chest. I am bulldozing my way to the rim, and there's nothing like, you know, it's cute, your guys' rim protection and your defensive player of the year voting and awards and whatever. I'm steamrolling you and I'm getting to the rim. And that version of Giannis, like Giannis is stronger than Wemby. Giannis is stronger than Chet. He, I think, does have some physical advantages over those guys. Those guys obviously have size and length, and especially in Wemby's case, like his just elite all-time rim protection. But I think Giannis would win some of those battles and be a force against both of those guys and both of those front lines. So he's the one guy where, I would say like if AD didn't have some of the injuries he had over the last couple of years, maybe AD would also be in that conversation. But how many of the top guys, if you're looking at who can you add in that's like a 4 or a 5 that can really dominate? Like, sure, Joel Embiid when he's available and healthy, but that's once in a blue moon. And even if he is healthy, you can't rely on that. Like, now Giannis has some health stuff that I think that's the biggest pushback or counter for the Giannis acquisition. I would say even more than the depth, because again, I think the Lakers are going to struggle to build a deep roster regardless of whether they have Giannis or not. I think the biggest thing is the health, and he just has not been healthy. It's been several seasons of him dealing with multiple injuries or not being healthy at the end of the season, and a lot of soft tissue injuries, a lot of lower extremity injuries. So that would be my primary concern with Giannis, would just be, how is he going to age? How is he going to hold up physically? Can he make it through an 82-game season? Can he make it through a playoff run? That's my question for Giannis. But to this point, like, I don't know that the Lakers can even build a deep enough roster to compete with OKC and San Antonio. So you almost have to rely on your top 7 or 8. And I do think Giannis would lead to a stronger top 7 or 8. Now, can they actually get him? Does he want to be in LA? Is he going to adapt his game? We talked about it on Lakers Collective. He'd have to play the 5 a lot more. He'd have to screen a lot more, be primarily a pick and roll guy. Does he want to do that? There's a lot of questions with that. And so right now I would still say it's unrealistic. I don't think the Lakers are favorites. I don't even think they're necessarily in the top 3 or 4 in the running for Giannis. But if there is a Giannis possibility on the table, I think the Lakers should consider it, because I think people are... I do think there's a little bit too much optimism in terms of what LA can do. As I've started to go through the cap stuff, it's just like they're maybe adding like 1 or 2 like good players into the rotation, and I don't think that's going to make enough of a difference against OKC. Like, if you just say, let's just say they hit on like the realistic best case scenario of, even if you keep Rui and Marcus, let's say you lose Luke, you keep Rui and Marcus, and you keep LeBron, and you add Peyton Watson and Mitchell Robinson. Do you think Mitchell Robinson, LeBron, Peyton Watson, Austin, Luka, Marcus, Rui, Jackson is like on par with San Antonio and OKC? Because I don't. I just don't. Especially with it. I mean, we'll see where LeBron's at a year from now, but I just don't think that group. I still think there are some defensive limitations there. Mitchell Robinson has some stuff with his health. Peyton Watson, we have to see how real the shooting is, and he's had stuff with his health and hamstrings. Like, I mean, I like that roster a lot better than this current roster. I think it's a better team, but I still think there's a gap there between them and San Antonio and OKC. So we'll see. But with all that said, I'm going to wrap here. Appreciate you guys hanging out with me tonight on another fun basketball game between these two. This is definitely like New York, Cleveland had a fun close to that game, or at least fun if you're not a Cavs fan. But this is the series, I think, of the playoffs, and is going to be one of the best series of the decade. But shout out to the chat. Shout out to the late night gang. I will not be back tomorrow, but I will be back on Friday with Lakers Collective. And then I'll have a new episode of Buha's Block. If you've not checked it out yet, I had a new mailbag go up where I go in depth on the cap stuff, and I break down just kind of piece by piece of, okay, this is a starting point for LA. This is where I think they're going to be with the guys under contract. I think DeAndre Ayton is going to opt in, and then the cap holds with Austin and Jackson, the empty roster charges, and then building out the roster from there of, okay, you got 10 guys under contract. You can maybe dump some guys, but you also have some guys you want to retain, and like just talking through different scenarios with the cap and what is realistic, talk through some draft stuff. So check out that mailbag if you have not done so already. But shout out to the chat, shout out to the late night gang. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. For those listening on audio, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. I'll be back on Friday. I'll talk to you all then.